argue for them to be ordinal and why some people argue that they're interval?
Because it's easier to measure if it's ordinal, because that's massive. It has equal intervals.
Right. So the controversy comes in. Everybody will say that these will have magnitude, right? Moreness. Like you could be more satisfied or less satisfied. So that's not the controversy, right? So what comes to property 2? So for something to be interval scale, it also has to have equal intervals. And this is where it becomes controversial with some of these psychological things like IQ. What is the controversy? What is the argument about whether it does or does not have equal intervals?
Well, I talked before, but because like saying the IQ difference between like 100 and 105, and then saying the IQ difference between 60 and 65, like it's completely different. Like it's ranked differently. Like people that are 100 and between 100 and 105, like they're smarter than people that are 60. So it's the same difference. Like,
Right.
It's the same number of difference, but
right.
It's different because the value is different.
The value, like what those values mean are different. So if you just look at, yes, they have the same score differences, but there's something, they don't mean the same when you're looking at it in like the real world. An IQ difference of 5 points when you're going lower down to people with like mental retardation, 5 points, you see much bigger differences between people with like a 45 IQ and a 50 IQ and how they're interacting in the world. But if you look at somebody who's like above intelligence, like 105 and 110, you won't see those differences. They both could be doing the same sorts of jobs and getting the same sorts of grades. You're not going to see that in the real world. So they're saying they're not really equal, even though they're 5 points. And that's where the argument comes in. It becomes important because what statistical analyses do you use? Is everybody on board with me? Okay, that's what I really want you to know. So you have to write that down, however it is that you need to remember that. We did this one, right? All right.
What is it?
Get in your groups. Come on. Get in your groups saying, again, what I'm looking at is what are the properties? That's the first question you're going to ask because it'll tell you what scale of measurement is. What properties? What's the scale of measurement?
It could be sort of both. Because it depends on how they're looking at it. Like they're just looking at it so they don't think what they're doing. But that's just like categorical.
Anybody need more time on this one? Well, that's what I hear. Let's go to the next one. This one's there. I don't know if it has equal intervals, Anybody need more time on this one? It could be both ways. And I mean, but if we
I was thinking that like you wait for
Alright, moving to the next one. Start reading on Netflix. Yeah.
So,
No, Netflix.
oh, ratings?
Does it have a star?
So it doesn't last.
I think it was
It is ranking it though. Well, ordinal does the magnitude.
About 15 more seconds on this one.
I don't know, because we could have 0 stars. I think it's already been moving. But it is ranking. It's deciding like how good or how bad it is.
Next one.
so that would be
Lots tomorrow. I just put awards.
awards. What has magnitude? I don't have equal intervals.
And I just put awards.
Oh, that's maybe I GPA, okay, it has magnitude. It has
How we told them that we get it and they
I don't have any awards.
Right, next one.
You never take any classes with it.
And again, if it were me going through these, how I would say is, does this have magnitude? Yes, no. Does this have equal intervals? Yes, no. Does this have absolute 0? Yes, no. Because the answer to those will tell you the scale. Don't go to the scale first, go to the properties first. Okay? It's just a hint. Next one, GPA. Okay, I'm adding one more thing. It's your responsibility as a group member to make sure that everybody in your group understands which one it is and why. Because when I'm going to go through this again, I'm not just having the same 3 people talk in class. I'm going to just come to somebody and be like, you. Okay? It's okay if you get it wrong, but just because you know the answer and you're telling the other person, you want to make sure the other person, you're going to help out your fellows, okay? Make sure they understand.
Like, there could be a difference between like 0 and 1, like if you add it. Like 3, 4, where it's
Pain scale.
So on all the pictures, do we look for the properties first and then the scale?
Properties, because knowing what properties it has will tell you what the scale is. And scales depend on the properties. The first questions are which properties does it have? That's where you go. And that'll tell you.
I don't know if people no, it can't have equal intervals. I don't think so because from 0 to 1, because people can't so I think it's can do whatever works for you, but I honestly guess that properties like this can't have the right you can't say like you're acting 45 because we do 40
It's a pain scale. Everything is ordered because like there's rankings.
Well, yeah, like 85 is for the 90. 85 is if you have to be really good. If you have 105, it's like, oh my because, yeah, like if you're
I don't know, because before I used to have like a clear cut definition of what the balance class is
I
like.
know, it does.
All right, next one. Blood pressure.
That one is it's ratio. You're dead. It's true.
If you look at the thing, no, it's like 99. I mean, that's in wrong.
Like single girls thing. Money, yeah.
Well, I think that's like the order. You can't be happy. But do you want to go back to
And last one, Gmail user happiness survey. How satisfied are you with Gmail? How likely would you recommend Gmail to a friend?
I have to. I don't think the information. We'll just find out. It's not very great, dude. I don't know because like with that you can say that anything is not racial. Like that's just hard.
but it's still, it's right. It's just like,
Because you could say the same thing with money too. Like if I don't have any money and I have $1,
when it's ranked,
like that's just $1, you know. But then if I have $1,000 and then I don't have $1, like that's life. Like you can do a funny thing, it's just really confusing. So like,
Alright, okay. Okay, this is what I'm going to do, guys. Okay, we're going to come together as a class, and it is okay to get these wrong. These are hard. You get PhDs in a room, and they're going to argue about these. The thing is, like, I want you to teach you to think, and I want you to do the argument. So if you have, like, an exam or something, and you don't agree with the answer, come to my office and tell me what your argument is, okay? But you need to start thinking about these things. So when I call on people, it is okay to get this wrong. It's fine. Get it wrong in here. Don't get it wrong on a test. And also, this is how I want the structure to be. I want you to say, I want you to go through the properties. Magnitude. Yes, no, and y. What's the next one? Equal intervals. The same. And absolute 0. Same. And then say, therefore, the scale is blank, or sometimes we could say it could either be blank or blank and lay out the argument that we've been talking about, okay? So, for how many children do you have? My first person. All right, everybody be quiet, okay? So we can hear this person.
Okay, I think it does have magnitude.
It does have magnitude. How so?
Yeah, because you can have like more children.
Yeah, you can have more or less kids. Right? So it has magnitude.
So I think it is also normal.
Oh, don't go there yet.
Oh,
So what's the
okay.
next? What's the next property?
Oh, yeah. I don't know, but equal intervals. Well,
What do you know about equal intervals?
well, that it has to be like, well, maybe time.
So
Because then you have or it's 2 and 2.
right.
Or
So
something like that.
the difference between 1 and 2 kids.
Yeah.
The same difference between 3 and 4
4.
is a difference of 1.
Yeah.
So would we say that that has equal intervals?
Yes.
Okay.
And then, well, absolute 0 because you don't,
If
you
you
don't
have
have any
0.
children, so.
Okay. So this is why I'm asking property first. So you're saying yes, yes,
and
yes. So if you have, so you put ratio, right? So knowing which ones are here tells you what scale. Go to properties first. Okay. Excellent job. Thank you for participating by force. Oh yes, argue. Yes. Go back.
Isn't it like magnitude? Isn't it more like is your first child more? Is your first kid more your kid than your fourth kid? They're the same kid. No, not the same kid, but like.
We're like more as in number. Are you talking about like quality or?
Okay, someone translate this, please. Tu primer hijo no es más hijo que tu cuarto hijo.
Okay, the equal interval is not the same. Like, if you have one kid, the first kid is not the same as your fourth kid.
Like,
You say like that your first kid is not more than your
but
fourth
the
kid.
number, like loving the number.
It's not the right number of kids.
How many? That's what it's asking.
Just like how many?
Not
There's numbers, not like
it.
qualitative.
Yeah.
Because if we did, we could go there, right? And we could have it be a different scale based on we're going like which kid is the smartest or something like that, or which kid is, has this certain kind of quality. But here we're just counting numbers, right? Just numbers. It's a good question.
But on that one, it's going to be all of them. On that one, the properties
Yes, for this one here, the magnitude, this one has all three, magnitude, equal intervals, and absolute 0. And I gave you guys a chart on the slides that you can kind of look at to see if it has all these properties, which scale is it? Okay? All right, the next one is going to be like a weight scale, and this time I'm going to go back with the red top and the sunglasses. So we're going to go by this first. Okay, does this have magnitude and why? So for magnitude, what is magnitude? I'm not picking on you, you're fine. You're close. It's one of the properties, equal intervals. You're on that thing. What is under equal intervals? You're getting there, right? It's the same, right? So like on a scale of 1 to 100, it's the same as like 90 to 100, it's the same as 90 to 2. It's a 2-point difference. So that's equal intervals. So does this have equal intervals? Yes. So what about magnitude? What is magnitude? And you can call them friends here. More or less, right? So does this have magnitude? So you can weigh more than somebody else, right? And then what about absolute 0? 0, like nothing, right? So if it has magnitude, equal intervals, and absolute 0, what scale does it have to be? Ratio. Okay, let's go to this nobody's talking to the person talking, so it's really hard for everybody to hear that person.
But I don't need to be absolute zero because there's no one that I can use like zero count.
Well, that's
Exactly, because there's not a person. There's not a person on the scale.
There's not a person on the scale, and there'd be zero weights.
There's a zero.
They have zero on the scale, so if you don't even do anything, like, it's zero. But if we're actually doing anything that requires weights, if we put anything on the scale, it's going to be but technically, you could have zero.
But aren't we just measuring people, like not just the scale by itself, so that it wouldn't, absolute zero wouldn't be one?
They're going by the measure itself, so not necessarily what you're using to study with it. So because you technically could be a zero weight,
So it's just the.
it's going to be have the absolute zero. So on the scale of weight, it is possible to have an absolute zero. Right.
You're not gonna have something like this or like so controversial like on the exam or.
What have I said about this?
Like,
No. You guys don't worry about it. Right now we're playing, right? I'm getting you guys to think. So on an exam, it'll be most, especially the ones that are controversial, the interval and the ordinal, right? Right? This I probably wouldn't say would be controversial. Why? Because there is an absolute zero, there's equal intervals, there's magnitude, period.
What I like is you can discuss your answer.
Yes. Well, this is the part that we're discussing, and don't just worry about the grade. I want you to learn. That's the point of college. That's the point of being here. Don't worry about your grade.
So we learned
about
the name.
All right, this one I'm choosing. You knew it, right? Okay. Go ahead. Start like this. Does this have magnitude?
Well, yeah, you have one star.
All right, so you can have more or less stars. You like it in different degrees. What about equal intervals?
Yeah, because one to two stars is the same as, or like the interval is the same as 3 to 4.
Okay, right. What about absolute zero?
I mean, technically you could if you don't rate it.
Right, technically you could because you don't rate it.
Yeah.
So what would you give it?
I guess ratio. I mean, according to all that, but I mean, that's not what I put.
Okay. Okay, no, this is good thinking. What were you going to say?
I don't think she's done, right? Or are you done?
Oh, no, that's fine. You can go.
Yeah, you're like, please.
Well, like, you know how sometimes they put like half a star or 1/4 of a star? I don't think it has to
You
go
can do that?
intervals.
So like if it takes Okay. Okay, like this is kind of like a Likert scale without words,
We've done it
right?
Or no, well, mine is and
Okay.
because it's ranking stars.
Ma'am, what was your argument?
Can you repeat it?
Oh, because, well, I've seen on Netflix that some movies that on the rating, it doesn't have like a complete star on it, you know?
Yeah, well, Netflix, and I'm not going to like trick you. I won't have something about Netflix, but how Netflix actually works is you can't really rank it half a star. If I have to do one of these, but then for like something they recommend, it may say like 3.5. I don't know how they come up with what they think that I'll like or not like. They add it and average it and stuff. That's where you see the half stars. But here, this is the only way that I would do it. Likert scales, I guess technically, you wouldn't just not do it at all. But that's not ever how it's measured. So if you see anything with a Likert scale, it doesn't have absolute zero. Just write that down. If you see a Likert scale like this, it does not have absolute zero.
It does not have.
Oh, Likert, it's Likert. So you're going to see this all the time in psychological measurements. If you go and you fill out any sort of customer service, something, it'll be like, I just got Time Warner and I had to do it on the phone. A scale of 1 to 10. How much did you like the service? Did they provide you the list? Yeah. So they don't have it, even though I'm confused. I'm glad that you guys said that because it means that you guys are thinking. So it technically doesn't. You technically cannot rate it at all. But if you were rating it, you'd have to rate it either 1 or 5. So that's what they're doing. Like if you would just not take it at all, you have a 0, right? But they're assuming that you're going to rank it, or you're going to either 1 or 5, one along together. Assume you're going to put something down.
Would it be any rating scale?
Yes. Any rating scale, like that scale. So it said we had magnitude because you have more than less. Equal intervals, that's another controversial one, right? This is like any other psychological measure. So what's the argument for what's the argument for whether or not it has equal intervals?
There's a difference between like 1 and 2 star and the same as like
Right, so you say the number score is like the same, and
Depends the person who's grading. Because there could be two, but the two will be different for her. And when you're talking about equal intervals in math or in numbers, from 1 to 10
Right.
will be exactly the same from 20 to 30 to 20 to 30. And for her will be exactly the same from 1 to 10 or 20 to 30. So that's equal interval
right.
from us. But
So
when something is subjective,
it may not be the
depends by
same.
mood, depends how I enjoy it, depends by
Or your
preferences.
liking, your preferences.
Right, so there could be a difference between like a 4 to 5 or like a 1 and a 2 in the real world. Like I have to really, really hate this movie to give it a 1, but the level of hate may not be the same in between like these things, right? So technically, again, this is the argument for equal intervals, which is what I want you. I'm gonna like rehearse it, like I'm gonna put this in your brain. Like technically, there's like one like the same interval between here and here and here and here. Technically. Right? But the question is, even though this technically it's like equal as far as the intervals, is it equal, like is the meaning equal? No. And that's what the argument is for these tests. So when you're coming up with an argument, like I want you to say, like, magnitude it has. Equal intervals, well that's controversial. Some people will say, somebody say, yes it does.
Yes.
What's the argument for yes it does?
Yes, it has well, from 1 star to 2 stars.
Right, but the meaning
is not the same.
However, other people would say it does not because
They're carrying the same value.
The more stars, the more it means it's better than compared to like when it has 1 star, it means it's not that good.
we're looking at the meaning of this value in real life. It doesn't necessarily have equal meaning. The score itself is equal, but the actual meaning of these scores at different values are different.
Another argument be like if you're like in love with like a 2-star movie, like you would rate it a 5, and like someone else obviously rated it a 2. So obviously like
Right.
you don't.
It gets a little wishy-washy. Like when we're talking about psychological things, like your highest level of sadness could be less than like you guys are rating sadness differently, even though maybe it's similar levels, right? When we go into some of the hard sciences or something like weight or height, well, that's very accurate. That's very precise. You get on the scale, and that's what you weigh. It's not the same when we're trying to, investigate psychological constructs, which makes it psychology like challenging and fascinating at the same time. It's imprecise. We're kind of getting a window into it. And when we're doing these studies and we have like a discussion section at the end of the argument, we're talking about all the limitations. And some of these are the limitations, right? That people may be rating these things in a different way. Okay, so equal intervals. What about absolute zero? We talked about that for Likert scales. No, because we're assuming that you're going to rate something on there. Okay? So if it has magnitude and equal intervals, what scale is it? Interval. If we say no, it has magnitude but not equal intervals, ordinal. Okay? This one. I'm going to pick Orlando.
It could be magnitude, I think. For sure it's...
Well, what about magnitude? Why do you think that it could have magnitude as far as...
There's the moreness factor. Like, you can either be first, second, third, fourth, or fifth.
Right. First place is better than fourth place. Yeah. So there's more or less. So it does have magnitude. What about equal intervals?
That's where I'm kind of confused because, like, you said equal intervals. We have to like apply meaning towards it, not the technicality.
Like that.
Right. Like, cause like first and second place is not the same as third and fourth place. Because, first and second place is like higher than it would be if you third and fourth place. So would it be equal intervals? Is my question. I don't think it would.
It wouldn't. It wouldn't.
So you're only going to get one award or the other. Either you're going to get first place or you're going to get last place. So there's no equal.
There's no equal.
The first place can have 99 points. The second place can have 8
Right.
points. And
Yeah,
the
there's
third place
exactly.
can have 79.
Exactly. So even like places in this class can be different. There's not the same like first place and second place. There could be a 2-point difference between their grades. And maybe like between second and third place or rank in the class, it could be 10, points. So those are not equal. So it does not have equal intervals. What about absolute zero?
No, you either have to get one of
Yes, because if they don't get an award, so it's zero.
Well, it's how they're doing it. Like, you could maybe say there's only 4 ribbons, and but even if there's a race and they're only award 4 ribbons, like you get a number, right? Like I finished like 99 out of 100 in a race. Like you get.
If you don't have equal intervals, you cannot have absolute zero either. You must have the second one in order to be able to have the third one, the third characteristic.
Yeah, so if you don't have equal intervals,
I haven't seen one that, yeah.
Well,
I mean,
Well, she's saying
Right.
like to get that scale, you have to have like.
right, you have to have 0. So if it only has magnitude, what scale does it have to be?
It's ordinal.
Ordinal.
But this is ranking, so an ordinal is just ranking, so.
Ordinal is just ranking. So if you get something like that, this will be the easiest, like place in a class or what your placement was in a race.
And technically you can't have zero place.
Yeah,
Like,
technically you
that's
can't. You rank somehow, even though some things, like an art fair, there's only like first, second, and third place. There could be a last place, like a scribble book.
what if you don't enter though?
What?
If you don't enter, would that be the absolute?
Yeah, we're talking about like for absolute zero, like it doesn't work because we're looking at people in our study or people in our race. If they weren't racing, they're not like in our study, right? Okay, so pain scale. I'm going to go with somebody in the orange. Orange shirt. Yeah. So does it have magnitude?
We skipped some.
Right, and why does it have magnitude? Because you're right.
You skip some of them.
Did I skip some of them? I'll go back. Right, more or less pain. Right. What about equal intervals?
yes.
How so?
Because, is it the same, like, how,
No, keep going. Because there could be an argument for both. Yes, both are valid. So let's do this one first. There are equal intervals. What's the argument?
I don't know, like, you have, like, the same amount of, like, difference in one another.
Right, so there's a difference of 1 between 0 and 1, the same as 1 and 2 as far as like the score. So you could say that has equal intervals. Some people might say that it does not have equal intervals, and what's the argument for that? Right, so we could say that there's a difference between a 0 and a 1 and a 4 and a 5, right? We could say that how they measure it in like real life, that there's a bigger difference between the two. So it's not actually equal in real life.
A rating scale has absolute zero. So isn't that a rating
No.
scale?
No,
It does not.
It does not, because we assume that we're going to, even though it does say that it's 0, there's not an absence
Oh, no hurt.
of like
You're
pain.
it either hurts or not. I mean,
Yeah, this is interesting.
well, there
It's
is,
weird.
there is
No hurt, there's no pain.
But this is a scale that's there
No
to
pain.
measure
what
pain.
if the person is
It's a
happy?
schedule to measure pain, and technically you could say that I'm not experiencing
Pain.
any pain.
And there might say your arm's broken, but you're like, I'm in no pain.
So technically this is usually given to get an idea of where pain is, but technically
Well, like when I was having
you cannot be experiencing pain,
But if
right?
you're not asking me,
But they're not gonna ask
with
that
that,
if you're
my
not.
missionary gave me when I was
Can you? And I would tell them, no, I have no pain.
Oh,
Because I literally had
No pain.
like it's like
No
when
pain.
I was in labor, I was listening to my whole labor, and they're like, "Do you have pain?" And I was like, "I don't feel any pain."
Yeah.
But it's not. I didn't feel any like contraction.
What?
That's what's like kind of not experiencing pain.
And this is they give you
This is what's interesting is because that's what they're saying. Sometimes you're given this measure and you may not be experiencing pain. You're just wondering.
and that's not.
If you're not in the race, then you're not going to get a place. That's kind of not what they're doing. They're just looking at the people in the race. They're kind of looking at like, are you in pain?
You're not going to use someone who comes in for,
Like if I were,
immunizations before they get there. Oh, do you feel any pain?
But then, where does it say no?
Okay, here's the thing. Okay, when I work in a clinical setting, right, I work at the VA, we ask this for every single person. Are you experiencing any pain today? Every single person, for mental health services even, we're asking them this question. And sometimes we get a 0.
So then that is like the tolerance of pain, and if somebody is like a 0, you're like, no, I don't feel anything, but it's just because it's there, and they're like, it doesn't really hurt, but to somebody else, that same feeling, it is pain.
Right?
It's
complicated. Okay.
So then not all life skills have an absolute 0.
So technically it is a ratio because you do have 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, but it's not the same, right?
Like 4 to 5, but the pain is still happening.
So
It's there to like stop it.
everybody agrees it has magnitude.
Yes.
All right. Equal intervals. That comes our controversial thing, right? Yes or no? And now absolute 0 is becoming controversial.
That's a case of.
And I'm telling you, like, you guys are like, oh my God, I'm so confused. Just tell me the right answer. Well, here's the thing. This is the difference between like high school and college. I'm telling you guys how to think. Like, people don't know. I think you have a room full of PhDs and they're going to argue this out. And the thing is, what I want more is you guys to be able to argue it out. Like, you guys are thinking, right? You guys are really thinking. And if you come to my office, I'm not going to mess you guys up on this exam, so just put that off the table. And if you come and, like, argue this to me, like, I'll be like, yes. I'll say, okay, yeah, I can see why you said there is an absolute 0. Like, you're going to lose study, blah, blah, blah. If somebody says, you could really have an absence of pain, and this is because why I'm thinking. And at least you could think about it and acknowledge the reasons for both. You have everything out on the table. There's no right or wrong. That's what I'm saying. Everybody in psychology, or is even saying, I don't know whether I'm going to use this as ordinal or interval. People are doing both, right? But they have arguments, and important for psychologists to know the arguments. It's getting you to think differently.
That's why
Okay, so it is tricky. It's tricky, but you guys are doing a great job because I'm hearing these arguments that I want to hear. I guess I skipped a whole bunch.
Yes.
Did we do this one?
No. So what was that?
After all, there's no agreement. There's no right answer, right? The answer is, this is the answer I'm looking for, okay? Here's the answer.
Depends on who you're asking. Like if you're asking a group of people that are in the same type, like okay, labor, and then you give them this.
The pain was there, it's just going to do it because of
But they're asking you physically, like how do you physically feel?
Even if I'm doing a study on pain and maybe I have some medication, I want to see if that helps. Even in that study, I might have people who are taking this medication be like, I'm reporting no pain now. It's working. So it could still have a 0. It could still have a 0. What I want you guys to know, the right answer is, does this have magnitude and why? You say yes or no and give me the argument. Does it have equal intervals? Yes or no? Or it could, well, it depends on how you think. Some people think it does because blank. Some people don't because of blank. Absolute 0. Well, this is also controversial. It could be because blank or not because blank. So based on these, it could either be like blank or blank. That's how I want you to start thinking about it, right? So don't even think about it as multiple choice. Think about it like writing out. Think about it as like writing out an answer, okay? Yes. Is everybody with me? Yes. Okay, now I'm going to pick somebody for... Usually eye contact. Okay. Okay, does this have magnitude? Why?
It could be.
Yeah, you have more or less flour. You can have 1 teaspoon or 1 tablespoon. You have like more or less. So it has magnitude. What about equal intervals? Yeah. Why? Yeah, the difference, like a half a teaspoon difference between like a half and 1 teaspoon is the same as like 1.5 to 2 teaspoons, right? It has equal intervals, right? This one definitely does. There's no conflict. This one has. Yes. Right? so that means it was turnover ratio. Okay. Don't you like the easy ones? GPA, and this time I'm going to pick pink. Sorry. Pink. Pink. Magnitude. How come?
Because you can have a higher GPA in our
Right. Equal intervals.
Controversial.
Okay, so lay it out.
Well, like if you're talking about GPA ranking, like it's the 1.1 and 2.1, like there is equal intervals because like the difference between 1.1 and 2.1 is the same as
Yeah, the actual score, same.
But
So
like
some
if
people
you're
say
talking
that.
about the intelligent wise, like it won't because somebody that has a 1.0, like the interval between the grades, like won't be the same as somebody who has a 4.0 or 3.0.
Right, so you're going to say there's probably a big difference between somebody who gets a 1.0 and a 2.0 versus somebody who gets a 3.0 and a 4.0, which is pretty true. So you say there's argument both ways, so yes or no, and why. What about absolute zero?
No, somebody can. If they don't do well.
And what if you get all Fs? What is an F? You get zero. So it's possible to get that. That's it?
Yeah, also when you start high school or college, the first day you start at 0, you don't have anything because you haven't earned a grade.
Right. That's another reason you got zero, because you don't have any credit.
That's true.
But though, when you're reporting your GPA, like your first year, like even then, it's not going to be like you have a zero GPA. You just don't have one yet, because that makes it look so bad. That's a good point too. But yes, you can actually have a zero GPA, which I hope people don't ever have. Okay. So, what was that? Pink. Sorry. What's your name? I'm sorry. Laura. Okay, so it has magnitude. If it has equal intervals and absolute zero, then what is it? Ratio. What if you're going the other way, saying it doesn't actually have equal intervals? Ordinal. Right. Okay. Oh, it's time to go. We're going so slowly.
But we're learning.
I mean, that's what I want you guys to learn. Is that
We are.
well, at least I am learning. No, I don't even have one in my office. You might try the secretary.